UCLA welcoming in the LSU Tigers. I say the home team first and the road team last because I got a quick question for you. Who truly will the home team be here? How do you define home? Is it just like your physical building, or is it the team that has the better crowd advantage? Because those could be two very different things. There are so many moments of truth that are about to happen in this LSU and UCLA game. You can go anything from the UCLA fan base being shamed all week for the gross lack of representation in the stands last week when they played Hawaii. You've got Chip Kelly and his staff. I mean, a lot has been expected of that staff. Thus far, they've had very mixed results, but this is a golden opportunity for them. For that matter, Ed Orgeron and his staff got two new coordinators. Ed Orgeron himself has heard the whispers and felt a little bit of heat over, the past 8 or 9 months since a disastrous 2020. You can atone for all that really early on in winning a competitive game. This game could go kind of like the Miami game they had to start the season a few years back. How about Max Johnson? Not first start, but the first week one start. And the first time that this team is fully his as the quarterback at LSU. And also, and this is a little bit, I think, overlooked right now, it is a huge beginning of a 14-day stretch for the Pac-12. Because not only does UCLA welcome in LSU here next week, we'll be talking about Washington going to Michigan. And we'll be talking about Oregon going all the way across the country to play Ohio State. Maybe we'll be at that game. Who knows? And it could be that the Pac-12 all of a sudden shocks everyone and goes 2-1 or 3-0, or they could go 0-3. Because you get mixed reactions as to who you ask about that point spread on that Washington-Michigan game, but the other two are dogs. And so they got a chance. The Pac-12 has a chance to make a little bit of a statement early on. But let's talk about this game. So the first thing that stands out immediately to me, I've been waiting to talk about this for weeks now, is I've enjoyed, just like any of you LSU fans have, reading practice reports and talking to people, if you can, close to the program, listening to Ed Orgeron talk. And to a man, everyone who talks about LSU believes that their run defense will be improved this year. Now, full disclosure, couldn't get a whole lot worse than it was last year. There were several elements of their defense that were just trashed last year, and they admit that. So this year, how improved is that run defense? Now, I'm a believer in this. I'm not skeptical of this, but I do think if you're UCLA, before you try anything else, before you see what your quarterback can do through the air, before you try out anything else, what you got to do is you got to find out if the rumors are true. Those rumors of a much improved interior run defense and just an improved run defense overall for LSU, you got to find out if that's true, because I can guarantee you one thing, and if you watched UCLA last week, you know this to be the case. The strengths of this team offensively are right up the middle. Their offensive line, that ground game, and a quarterback with a running element to his game. Zach Charbonnet is the Michigan transfer. He looked really good last week. I think he averaged like 50 yards a carry. But Brown is another running back they have. They got a 1-2 punch. LSU's got a 1-2 of their own. They're hoping that they can count on Saturday night. But my point is, the game becomes a lot more fundamental. The game becomes a lot more easy to figure out if we're watching, and at the end of the first quarter, UCLA's already ripped off 84 yards on the ground, and they're running for like 7.8 yards per pop. That's not a good thing, because that really, again, it takes it to kind of an academic level as to what to expect the rest of the night. Secondly, for LSU, you've got to, which way do I want to go here? I got like 14 different things I want to say. You got to make them show you that they can run the ball effectively. When I say they, I mean, if you're UCLA, you got to make LSU show you they can run the ball effectively. This is the focal point for me, both sides of this game. The state of this entire LSU team this year, and Ed Orgeron knows it, and that's why they focused on it so much, heavily depends on whether they can run the ball effectively. And that offensive line and the state of that offensive line is another one of these areas where you got to test the rumors. You've gotten, probably if you follow LSU day to day, you've gotten some mixed reactions as to how good this LSU offensive line can be this year. You got some people that would doubt them. Certainly doesn't help when you lose Dare Rosenthal, but you can find some very credible people around LSU to tell you, this offensive line, you give it time, it'll gel, this will be a really good unit. Again, depth charts and practice reports do not win you games. No matter how dependable they are, they don't win you games. Players do, in situations, in moments. They win you games. So we get to see it For better or for worse, we get to see it. So the first thing you got to make improve on this front is find out what Price can do for LSU. Find out what John Emery can do for LSU. You know, they've talked them up constantly. Ed Orgeron has gone out of his way to emphasize the ground game, to talk those guys up, to make sure everybody in the world knows we're dependent on these guys. Well, do they get the tough yards for you? Do they run consistently enough? And also, let's not overlook this. If you got some question marks or two along the offensive line, pass pro is pivotal in any game, but especially this one for an LSU offense that is still breaking in a fairly green quarterback here. Let's be honest about that. And so there's some fascinating dynamics, but there are also some fascinating intangibles. Let me ask you, you can give me your opinion on this actually. Where are the edges in these three categories in this LSU UCLA game? What's the home field edge? What is the quarterback edge? And what is the coaching edge as an entire staff? Because I think there may be a national misconception on all three fronts. You see, obviously, this game's being played in the Rose Bowl. You say, check home field advantage UCLA. You'll see every bit as much purple out there as you do powder blue Saturday. Guarantee you. Watch and see. Secondly, the quarterback edge. DTR's been out there a long time, but yet Max Johnson is probably a guy that I think has as high an upside. But the nation doesn't know about Max Johnson. Dorian Thompson-Robinson's been a name that's been in the kind of college football ether for quite a while. Max Johnson's not. So you may think the home guy is the edge, but it could be that at the end of the game you say, no, the Max Johnson kid, he's actually pretty good too. But the coaching staff edge, this is what I'm most fascinated by. Because you would not go Chip Kelly, Ed Orgeron heads up and go edge Orgeron, even with the checkered recent past that Chip Kelly's had. But I'm talking about an entire staff. And this is where you find out a lot about Durante Jones, the new defensive coordinator hire for LSU. You find out a lot about Pate, the offensive coordinator hire. There's just so much that remains to be seen. But that's the fun thing about September. Finally, 8 months, 9 months of talking, finally you get to see the product on the field. So let's take a look at what the Vegas line currently is. This thing's been moving around a little bit. And then let's take a look also right next to it at what our model says. So the Vegas line on this right now is LSU -3. There's a lot of LSU -2.5 out there. So full disclosure, we made this graphic like 3 hours ago. That line's kind of been floating around. Remember when this first came out? And I told you that this line was going to be under 3. And I got a lot of reaction about it. Like I decide what the line. I was just telling you fact. And a lot of you were incredulous. You couldn't believe it. And then you swore, I'll bet my entire life savings on it if they release that. Well, a lot of you did. And that line went from LSU -1.5 to LSU -4. But look what's happened. It didn't balloon to 7. It's come right back down. And it's either at field goal or a little bit under a field goal. Now some of you, took that to mean I was putting a prediction out on the game, which is asinine. If you've ever watched me, you know I'm not giving you any prediction in March or April. But now it is time to give a prediction. Our actual in-house model leans LSU. It's got LSU -5. And so I'm looking and I'm thinking to myself, do I really believe they are that improved? Because it's easy to go athlete for athlete. It's easy to look at talent roster and say, oh man, LSU way outclasses UCLA. That is not the way a football game is won. Less talented rosters win all the time. Iowa State does it all the time. And so UCLA can win this game, but LSU will win this game. And I think LSU will cover as well. And I think it'll be very reminiscent of that opener they had against Miami that I think was in Dallas a few years ago. There were cases you could make for Miami. Miami had some athletes. Miami had some edges, but they don't play halves. They're making them play 4 quarters. And over 4 quarters, I don't think UCLA is going to be consistent enough through the air offensively. Conversely, and I'm telling you this, even if that LSU ground game doesn't take over, there are going to be moments, whether it be Kayshon Boutte or whether it be one or multiples of these true freshmen they have, where you're eventually going to go, whoa. It'll probably happen about 4 or 5 times. LSU will have enough guys that make you go, whoa, to where UCLA doesn't. I know that sounds very, very dumbed down, but that's how this particular game is going to play out. Athletes will win the game. Athletes will make more plays for LSU, and through a 4-quarter game, they will not only win, I think LSU will cover this thing. So give me LSU to win and lay anything 3 or less. It's not a ramen noodle pick necessarily, but it is a pick that we like.